Before I get into the game, November 22nd was a big day for the PC Engine because it was the start of the 1989 hardware refresh. There are a lot of variants of the PC Engine, and they really get started in this 3-week period in which they release 3 whole new versions of the PC Engine hardware. Unfortunately, the first of these is probably the least exciting. The PC Engine Shuttle was the low-cost version of the PC Engine. What made it low-cost? Well, they removed the expansion port on the back, and that meant it was not compatible with the CD-ROM, the 10-NoCo-A2 memory bank, or the video expander. They did release a special backup RAM unit specifically for the PC Engine Shuttle, though. On the other hand, it did come with an ergonomic controller with a built-in rapid-fire function. So at least you were getting something. The Shuttle also cost just a hair under 19,000 yen, which meant it was about a 20% discount on the standard PC Engine model. The Shuttle proved to not be especially popular, and has made the Shuttle a bit of a collectible in recent years. Now let's get back to the subject of this video.
In video games, the pioneers rarely get the credit that they deserve. It's rarely the first game to do something that gets the credit for it. It's the first game to do it and be a success. Daichikun Crisis is a real-time strategy farming game. I've seen it described as inspiring the farming genre that would become bigger 10 years later. I'm a bit dubious of that claim myself, but it's hard to not see the similarities. Daichikun started out as a musical segment on the variety show Pow Pow channel. Daichikun was a cow that was a folk singer. The songs in the game are all adaptations of Daichikun's most popular songs. This is the first and last PC Engine game by Solio. Solio was a video game developer who only lasted for a few years in the late 80s. They were best known for being responsible for the Sega ports of Tecmo games. The plot of the game is that one day, a witch named Yaren visited Mumu Land and unleashed a volcano there. The volcano destroyed all the vegetation and unleashed a horde of monsters. So Daichikun gathers his family, and they're determined to restore the lush and verdant island. Daichikun Crisis is a very complicated game. I would say that you need to read the manual, except the manual is 6 pages long, and I'd say it has more omissions than actual information on how to play. The way it went when I was recording was I'd play for about 10 minutes, figure out some major mechanic that was absolutely vital, and then start over again so I could use that knowledge. Daichikun Crisis has 6 stages, and the first stage takes an hour and a half to play. Typically, I record about an hour of gameplay footage per video, and it took me an hour until I finally had the systems kind of down. So then I recorded an additional hour and a half just to cover more features of the game. Your goal on every stage is to cover almost the entirety of the island in full-grown trees. When the game starts, there are no trees, and a lot of volcanic ash spewed everywhere. You're controlling Daichikun, who's the cow in overalls that's roughly in the middle. Daichikun's friends and family surround him, and generally speaking, they can take 2 different actions. They can clear ash, or they can fight monsters. By default, the AI is set so that they'll wander around and do what they think is appropriate. But it is possible to give them orders to do only one of those, or nothing at all. You start out with 200 seeds for tomato plants, 200 seeds for corn, and 5,000 sauron, which is the currency of the game. To get those trees that you'll need to complete the stage, you'll have to buy seeds. And I suppose if you don't mind your game taking 4 or 5 hours per level, then you can get away with buying 1 packet of tree seeds for 500 sauron. But realistically, you're going to want to earn some money. And naturally, you do that by planting crops, waiting for them to grow, harvesting them, and then selling them at market. To plant a crop, you just have to be standing on an empty square, and then press button 1. You can hit select to rotate through the tools that you're using, which will be any seeds that you have, or a shovel if you've purchased one. Okay, you've got your seed in the ground, now what? Well, the way that this works is that, based on conditions, plants have a chance to grow to their next state, do nothing, or die. Once a plant reaches its third level, when the crop is nice and big, you can press button 1 to harvest that. The primary condition that affects whether or not the plant will grow is what time of year it is. Tomatoes grow best in the summer, corn grows best in the fall. So if you plant out of season, then there's a very good chance that your crops will just die. You also need to be sure that you're planting in good soil, and then beyond that, it's just a matter of time. You don't have to worry about watering your crops or anything like that. One thing you do have to worry about is your crops spoiling after you've harvested them. A random amount will just go bad on you from time to time. So you'll want to sell soon after you've harvested. The market is the location marked with a ship's anchor. But there's one problem with going to sell there. The market is only open quarterly. So in January, April, July, and October, you'll hear a ship's horn announcing that the market is open. And if you visited any other time, you can't do anything. Your crops have to be sold to the florist in the upper right, and that's where you can also purchase additional seeds. There's a lot of other things that you can purchase in the market, like treats to hand out to your family, power-ups and health recovery items, and tools to let you shape the land and make traps. Trees are a different kind of crop to grow, since they can grow in any season, and once they reach maturity, you don't harvest them, you just let them sit. Trees can die off in the process of growing, though, so you'll still want to do things like keep enemies away from them. Once a tree is fully mature, then it has a chance to spread to neighboring tiles. That's why technically you only need one packet of seeds. However, it can take a full year for a tree to reach maturity, so it can take a very long time to complete a stage unless you plant a lot of trees. This does mean that the optimal strategy is to spread your tree planting out a lot. Leave some big gaps so that the trees can come together. The big threat that you have to deal with as you're handling growing all your crops are the monsters that periodically spawn at the volcano. About once a minute, the volcano will spit out another 4 of them, and these monsters drop ash wherever they go. That means they can easily destroy your crops. You fight them by pressing button 2. That'll make Daichikun punch, and hopefully you stun lock the enemy until it's defeated. Unfortunately, if you're hit, then it's very likely that you'll be stun locked. Yeah, the combat really doesn't work very well here, and you're almost always better off leaving it to everyone else who's running around. If you're defeated, then you go back to your start point and lose half your money. And since you don't have enough money to begin with, you might as well just restart. If your friends are defeated, they go back to Daichikun's house, and you'll have to use an item to revive them. There are a few more ways that you can stop the enemies. If you've purchased the shovel, then if you use that on empty ground, you'll dig a little hole that can trap them. This also traps your friends, so it winds up being completely useless. The other thing is that the monsters aren't very good with water. Crossing water damages them, so if you could build a moat around the volcano, it would effectively trap them there. And that's where your tractor comes in. You can enter your tractor by walking on top of it and then pressing button 2. It has its own fuel gauge that depletes as you drive around, take actions, or the tractor gets hit. When the fuel gets low, the tractor will move extremely slowly, and eventually just come to a halt. When the tractor runs out of fuel like this, you have to purchase a can of gas from the market and then use it at the tractor. The real power of the tractor is that when you press button 1, it will clear the land. So you can hold down button 1 and drive back and forth to get rid of a ton of ash, or wipe out your own crops if you're not paying attention. The most powerful use of the tractor is that if you start out over water when you press button 1, then you cut a trench into the earth as you move, and that will create its own body of water. During the storms that come in the autumn, these artificial bodies of water will flood and spread, and that becomes a problem because you might wind up flooding out too much land and have to fill it back in for your trees. The best strategy in Daichikun Crisis is to just immediately take the tractor and carve a moat around the volcano. A 2 square wide moat will kill just about anything that emerges from it. That'll leave you free to plant anything on the rest of the map, and then as you approach the end of the stage, you can always remove the moat so that the trees can spread onto the volcano. Daichikun Crisis has a fairly complicated interface for handling other functions. First, you have to press Start to bring up the status screen. When you do that, you have a cursor that can freely move anywhere, but the only thing it can interact with is the picture of Daichikun, which it's already on when you do that. Button 1 then brings up the main menu, and here there's 6 options. Check will show you the status of any character, your harvested crops, and your tractor. The wrench is what you go to in order to use items, and every character has their own inventory to use items from. The gift icon is how you manage that inventory, moving items between characters. And backup is where you go in order to save your progress either to the Ten no Koe 2 battery backup unit or to just receive a password. The fan is the strategy menu, and that's where you go to set the actions for every character. And the final icon is to just get you a little bit of advice. Once trees have filled up enough of the map, you're thrown into a boss battle with very little warning. These play out like a beat-em-up, and here button 1 will jump, while button 2 will punch. You can also press and hold down button 2 to charge up a ranged Mu attack. If the boss defeats you, then you have to do the entire stage over again from the beginning. And keep in mind, even in good circumstances, it'll take you an hour and a half to get to this point. If you manage to beat the boss, then you liberate the island, and you can sail off to one of the other islands. One catch though, your inventory and status are maintained between stages. So if you spent all of your money and seeds getting to the boss, then you start the next stage with no money and seeds. While Daichikun Crisis doesn't really seem to have been a hit in Japan, it definitely has a cult following. I found quite a few people who pointed to it as one of the system's best. My own take is a lot more subdued. Daichikun Crisis is one of those situations where they were feeling out some game concepts, but they weren't really working yet. You're going to spend an awful lot of time sitting around doing nothing, waiting for things to grow or for the market to open. There's not enough difference between the different crops you can grow. The combat system doesn't work at all, and neither does managing an enormous troop of helpers. Daichikun Crisis is the primordial ancestor of the farming game, but for every interesting game element, there's 3 more that just cause problems. So I have to put Daichikun Crisis down as a historically interesting game, but one that's not very fun to play.